Hello and welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Mohammed Saleh, and let's get the show rolling. Now, war and diplomacy are two sides of the same coin. Now, for the last couple of decades, the belligerent rise of Beijing has dictated America's policy for containing China. The fact that China is looking for world domination is not in doubt. Now, think of the world map as a chessboard. With the AUKUS deal, the United States is moving its pawns to try and encircle the Chinese expansion in the Asia-Pacific. Behind the diplomatic handshakes and also the year-to-year grins that were shared by Joe Biden, Rishi Sunak and Anthony Albanese, what we are witnessing is the preparation of a war in the Asia-Pacific. Now, the fact that there is a bruising war that is currently underway in Ukraine has not sated the appetite of the world leaders and also of the defense manufacturers who are laughing their way to the banks. The AUKUS deal is worth a staggering $368 billion. It will provide for nuclear submarines to Australia, but will it prevent the Dragon's War from consuming Taiwan? This, of course, will be our cover story. And also on the show tonight, Russia bombs Ukraine with incendiary ammunition, burning down large neighborhoods to ashes. As the world watches the Ukraine war in horror, there is an obvious question that has missed everyone's mind. Has the war in Ukraine now turned into a testing ground for new and deadly weapons? And also in Britain, there have been at least about 1,500 complaints against police officers who have now been accused of crimes against women and girls. But the shocking part is that often these police personnel have gone scot-free with no penalty whatsoever for their crimes. So what does one do when the men in uniform, who must be your protectors, turn into predators? And also, Indian banks are reported to be safer than American banks as the global financial markets stagger with the impact of the bank runs that have now resulted in the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and the Signature Bank. We'll tell you why in India you will remain insulated from the financial contagion that has gripped the Western world. Have you wondered about a lack of sleep? Does it make vaccines less effective for you? Giving you the immunity, not giving you the immunity that you're looking for. Now, we'll tell you why this happens, because missing on your sleep can actually make you fall ill repeatedly with a weakened immune system with very serious consequences for your well-being. We'll get you that in just a bit from now, but first let's ask this big question. Can AUKUS save Taiwan? The world is talking about the big deal that was signed in San Diego in America. The Western media is celebrating Christmas early this year, but here's a question that no one is asking. Can AUKUS really save Taiwan? Because the moment you ask what may seem like a question with an obvious answer, the deal becomes a complete bit of a hogwash. And what no one is telling you is that the AUKUS deal has a fundamental problem that defeats the very purpose that it is supposedly destined to serve. And we'll answer this for you by repeating this question for a third time. Can the AUKUS military alliance save Taiwan? Now, the answer is no, it won't. And let me tell you a little on what this deal is all about. It is about taking forward the nuclear partnership between Australia, the United Kingdom, and also the United States. The AUKUS is about enabling Australia to counter the Chinese offensive. How? By equipping Australia by selling it nuclear-powered submarines. The United States is selling Australia 3 Virginia-class attack submarines. Now, these submarines come at a price tag, a jaw-dropping price tag of $268 billion. This price tag could go even higher, to as much as about $368 billion, which is more than the GDP of Singapore and Malaysia. So what is special about these submarines? Well, they can actually stay submerged for as long as you want. They can launch powerful missiles. As many as about 38 weapons can be loaded on these vehicles. And they can also host as many as 135 crew members on board. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is calling these submarines as the biggest single investment in Australia's defence capacities. The British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has said that thousands of jobs will be created in Britain as a result of this deal. But there is a slight problem, because remember, AUKUS is neither a Manrega or an employment generation scheme, nor is it a sovereign fund. AUKUS, at the core of it, is about countering the rise of China. When these three countries came together under the AUKUS umbrella, they had promised to counter China's influence in the Indo-Pacific, to ensure a free, open and an inclusive Indo-Pacific. But the San Diego AUKUS deal does not even begin to scratch the surface. Because this deal means that nothing is actually likely to be done in case China decides to invade Taiwan, which of course happens to be the most immediate war in the Indo-Pacific. The United States has said that the submarines will be delivered by early 2030s. It could be sometime in the 2035 region or even later. The United States will be delivering these submarines at its leisure. There is no certainty, but China is certain that it wants to unify Taiwan with mainland China, and it will not hesitate to use force to do this. And even American military generals are predicting that China could invade Taiwan by as early as 2025. That is about 3 years from now. So the question, of course, is this: what will AUKUS actually do or achieve in countering China in the next 3 years? There could be a computer sketch of the submarines at best, or framed photographs of the San Diego handshakes of the three world leaders. Now, which of these two weapons do you think will help in defending Taiwan? Handshakes or a 3D model of a submarine? Now, and also, did we mention that the sale of the Virginia-class submarines needs the approval of the US Congress, which, by the way, Biden is yet to secure. And last we checked, there were still some lawmakers who opposed the sale of these nuclear submarines to Australia. So do you see the obvious paradox here in the AUKUS deal? There is a fundamental mismatch between the AUKUS timeline and what it can do and the reality that is now developing in the Indo-Pacific. We're looking at a war in about 3 years from now. And the AUKUS is speaking in the vaguest and the most stretched deadlines possible, early 2030s. Now, what is one to make of AUKUS? Now, to put it bluntly, it's nothing more than American hocus pocus. It is the United States of America and its military-industrial defense complex trying to sell weapons, donating its old toys to a step sibling. The other is, of course, of being a spendthrift.
So today, as we stand at the inflection point in history, where the hard work of enhancing deterrence and promoting stability is going to affect the prospect of peace for decades to come,
we are bound, above all, by our belief in a world where the sovereignty of every nation is respected and the inherent dignity of every individual is upheld.
All right, so that is what these leaders have to say. They're describing it as an inflection point. But if you look at the details of this deal, it's nothing more than an expensive eyewash. This deal is words and figures that are floating in the air. By 2030s, Australia will have about 3 American submarines. And post that, Australia will have the option to purchase 2 more submarines. By late 2030s, the United Kingdom is expected to deliver its first home-built nuclear submarine. Now, mark the use of the term expected, because there is no certainty here either. And if late 2030s was not enough, there's also a plan for early 2040s. And that is when Australia will actually deliver the British subs to its Navy. 2040. Can you think of this timeline? By the time the AUKUS would have executed its multi-stage plan, the Dragon would have stretched its wings multifold. China already has its coast guards and its maritime militia around Taiwan, the Philippines, in Malaysia, Brunei and Vietnam. China is already building artificial islands in the South China Sea. Beijing has also just launched its third aircraft carrier this year in 2022. Full-fledged rehearsals of the Taiwan war are underway by Beijing, with almost daily breaches of Taiwan's air defense identification zone. So when the day comes when China finally sounds the war bugle, and this will happen under Xi Jinping, and the PLA troops in fact swoop down towards Taiwan, the AUKUS will expose itself as completely irrelevant for the war that it has been prepared for. Our next story is from the bruising battlefields of Ukraine. From the moment Russia rolled in its tanks in Ukraine, this war has been a testing ground for new and deadly weapons. From the thermite bombs to hypersonic missiles to weapons of all kinds and forms that are being tested in this conflict. Let me in fact show you this video. Now this is a scene from a Ukrainian town of Volodar. This is a quaint town that is located in the Donetsk Oblast. It shows what appear to be white flames that are incessantly raining down from the skies, causing destruction on a scale that simply cannot be imagined.
Та пока не попало. Если что, буду сбивать. В курсе. Да. Ну я ж не думав, що це по трьом чувакам фосфор кинули.
This video has in fact gone viral online with multiple clips doing the rounds. The question is this: what exactly are these things and how lethal are they really? The reports say that they are incendiary bombs. Let me explain as to how they work. To start with, these bombs are launched from a BM-21 Grad system. There is a Soviet-era multiple launch rocket system. They are fitted inside of 122mm Grad 9M22S rocket. The warhead contains about 180 unfused incendiary elements. They are ejected when the missile is just a few hundred feet above its target. Each ML5 is a hexagonal-shaped magnesium casing packed with thermite-type pyrotechnic compositions, which is why, on first glance, they may look like fireworks. But make no mistake, these are not fireworks. These are bombs that are designed to ignite vegetation, fuel and buildings. Each bomb has a burn time of about 2 minutes to increase the chance of fire. These bombs are terrifying anyone who is unfortunate enough to be caught underneath them. They rain like white-hot flames, scorching the earth, leaving nowhere to hide for the people. And this is where things actually begin to get murkier. You see, the use of these kind of incendiary ammunition against civilian targets is outlawed by a United Nations treaty. This is a treaty that has been signed by Russia, Ukraine, and at least 123 other nations. But despite of this, such weapons have been used repeatedly by the Russian forces. In 2016, the Syrian opposition had accused Russia of using these bombs in the Syrian civil war. It said that the Bashar al-Assad regime was using these bombs to terrorize civilians. 6 years on, these bombs have been spotted again, and this time they've been spotted in Ukraine. The question is this: can something be done about the usage of these kind of weapons on civilian populations? The simple answer is not really. Now, these incendiary bombs are not alone. Ever since the war started, Ukraine has become a laboratory of sorts where death-dealing weapons are being tested. These are weapons that can cause mass casualties. Take the case of the Kh-22 missile. Now, this is some kind of an anti-ship missile. Russian bombers have been using them heavily. These missiles were primarily designed to destroy aircraft carriers, but they are being used in ground attacks with conventional warheads. And this makes them more dangerous. These missiles are also highly inaccurate, and therefore they end up causing severe collateral damage and casualties. Look at this headline now. It's from last month. This is when the Kh-22 missile struck a 9-storied building, reducing it to a smoldering debris. The Ukraine doesn't have the defense capabilities to shoot down these types of missiles, and that's not even the worst part. Look at this report. Last Thursday, Russia fired the hypersonic Kinzhal missiles on Ukraine, a nuclear-capable air-launched ballistic missile that has the capability to elude Kiev's air defenses at this moment. Kiev has got nothing to, in fact, stop these Kinzhal missiles. Russia reportedly launched about 6 of them, and all 6 of them struck their targets. Now, Kiev says that it simply hadn't seen an attack of this scale before. Look at this report now. Russia has also deployed a new type of Zircon hypersonic missile in the Atlantic. It is a potential weapon that is capable of penetrating any kind of anti-missile defense system. It flies 9 times faster than the speed of sound, and that too with a range of 1,000 kilometers. This speed makes the missile almost difficult, almost impossible to intercept. And then we have this report where earlier this month, Russia used a 1.5-ton glide bomb for the first time ever in this war. Now, this bomb that you're looking at on your screens is called the UPAB 1500V. In the first week of March, a host of these bombs were dropped in Ukraine, causing heavy damage. Now, for the unversed, these bombs are equipped with wings that help them glide towards their target, and they can destroy even hardened targets such as command posts or bunkers or any underground facilities for that matter. And it's not just the Russians, even the Ukrainians have been handed some new weapons that are being tested out in the battlefield. But Ukraine's shenanigans rarely make global headlines. Now look at this report. It talks about how Ukraine has become a test bed for Western weapons and battlefield innovations, of how Ukraine is getting sophisticated American missiles to counter Russia's Soviet-era weapons. But where will all of this lead? No one at this moment can predict, because at this moment what is happening in the Russia-Ukraine war is that things are clearly getting out of hand. Let's now shift our attention to Pakistan. The Tosha Khana controversy there is intensifying. For the unversed, the Tosha Khana is Pakistan's national treasure, where gifts and emblems of honor are kept. Now, it's been in the headlines since last year, courtesy Imran Khan, the former Pakistani Prime Minister, and he's now been accused of selling state gifts from the Tosha Khana, a case that could see him get arrested pretty soon. We'll tell you why in just a bit, but first let's actually tell you about a new decision that the Pakistani government has taken. It has imposed a $300 limit on state gifts, meaning that only those gifts whose value is about $300 can be retained by the recipient at the time that he or she is the head of the government. Now, any gift that exceeds this monetary limit shall straightaway become the state's property. No one, be it the president, the prime minister or a cabinet member, will have the right to retain such a gift. Let me actually break down as to how this policy will work. Firstly, any gift received by the government functionaries must be deposited in the Tosha Khana within 30 days of the receipt of the gift. This is irrespective of the price of the said gift. Secondly, punitive action will be taken against any individual that does not report the receipt of the gifts or fails to deposit them in the Tosha Khana. Thirdly, only gifts that cost below $300 will be available for retention by the individual, and that too after a due payment is made. And it does not end here. For the first time ever, Islamabad has also released a record of the Tosha Khana gifts, details of gifts that have been kept in the state repository since 2002, and the names of people who've retained some of these gifts. The list includes judges, retired generals, bureaucrats, senior journalists, federal ministers, prime ministers and presidents of Pakistan. We'll focus on the last two. Amongst those who've retained state gifts are Pakistan's current president, Arif Alvi, the former president, Asif Ali Zardari, the former prime minister, Shaukat Aziz, and the late military dictator, Pervez Musharraf, and the former prime minister, Imran Khan, and even the former prime minister, Nawaz Sharif. Did all of them retain the gifts at a whim? Not really. Now, according to the document that's been released by the Pakistani government, most office holders retained the gifts free of cost, except Asif Ali Zardari and Nawaz Sharif. They apparently retained the gifts after paying some money to the Tosha Khana. If we speak of Asif Ali Zardari, he apparently retained a BMW after paying 4 million Pakistani rupees for it. In the case of Nawaz Sharif, he apparently paid more than $500,000 to retain a Mercedes-Benz. Now, why are we not surprised? Because both these men happen to be related to the current leaders in the Pakistani government. Asif Ali Zardari is the father of Pakistan's current foreign minister, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. And Nawaz Sharif, the former prime minister, is the elder brother of the incumbent prime minister, Shehbaz Sharif. The point that we're making is very simple. The fact that only these two leaders paid for the gift seems almost like a hogwash. By all means, it is meant to further corner Imran Khan. As you know, he's currently facing charges of selling precious wristwatches and ornaments that he had received during his tenure as the Prime Minister. So by saying that Nawaz Sharif had paid for his gifts and Imran Khan didn't, the current dispensation is only trying to lay the groundwork for a stricter punishment. That is only if his supporters will allow for it. Look at these images. They are from this afternoon and they show a huge contingent of the police deployed outside the residence of Imran Khan as a massive sea of protesters are trying to block him. Now, these cops went to his home to arrest him, but they had to deal with the PTI workers. Now, remember, all of this drama is about the Tosha Khana case. There's also an arrest warrant against Imran Khan's name, or what? Well, what else besides the Tosha Khana controversy? The Imran Khan supporters say that they won't let the arrest happen. So throughout the day, this is what played out in the streets of Pakistan, where the supporters of the PTI clashed with the cops, blocking them from entering the home of Imran Khan. So what is Imran Khan saying about all this? Now, earlier in the day, he released a video message, telling the nation that even if they jail or kill him, the fight against Shehbaz Sharif's government will not stop.
मेरे पाकिस्तानियों, पुलिस मुझे जेल में पकड़ने के लिए आ गई है बाहर, और उनका ये ख्याल है कि जब इमरान खान जेल में चला जाएगा तो कौम सो जाएगी। आपने इनको गलत साबित करना है। आपने ये साबित करना है कि ये जिंदा कौम है, ये मोहम्मद मुस्तफ़ा नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की उम्मत है। देखिए, इमरान खान को अल्लाह ने सब कुछ दे चुका है। मैं आपकी ये जंग लड़ रहा हूं, मैं तो अपनी सारी जिंदगी जंग लड़ी और लड़ता रहूंगा, लेकिन अगर मुझे कुछ होता है या जेल में जाता हूं या मार देते हैं, तो आपने ये साबित करना है कि इमरान खान के बगैर भी ये कौम जदोजहद करेगी, और ये बदतरीन गुलामी इन चोरों की और ये जो एक आदमी फैसले कर रहा है इस मुल्क के, ये कभी आप कबूल नहीं करेंगे।
The political drama in Pakistan, of course, never ends. The financial markets are driven by sentiment. And at this moment, as I speak, there are global jitters over what a bank run in America means for the global financial system. Now, such is the scale of market panic that $465 billion of market capitalization has been wiped off in a span of just 2 days. It's been nothing short of a bloodbath at the markets, and investors from New York to Tokyo are cutting their exposure. But in this global gloom and doom, there is one bright spot that has in fact stood out for everyone's surprise, and it is the Indian banking system that seems to have weathered this crisis way better than the banking systems of the West. There's been some impact, the market sentiment is down, but by and large the fact remains that Indian banks have remained largely insulated to the financial contagion that has started from America, sparked by the bank runs at the Silicon Valley and the Signature Bank in the United States. So how is it that Indian banks have remained largely immune and insulated to this? Now, to begin with, the Indian banks inherently have a conservative approach to lending. So they are very well secured in terms of the lending ratios. Apart from this, India also has a very robust regulatory framework that's been put in place by the Reserve Bank of India. Even big private players in India are monitored carefully by the central bank. Equally important is the fact that the Indian banks do not depend much on Western economies or their financial services industries. Indian bank borrowings from outside of India are said to be just about 4 to 5% of their total balance sheets. And about 90% of their lending, this is crucial, the 90% of Indian banks' lendings is also to Indian borrowers. Therefore, when customers default in the West, the Indian banks are not badly affected. But in the United States, though, the bad news has not ended with the Silicon Valley Bank and the Signature Bank. The ratings agency Moody's has now placed 6 more American banks on a review for a downgrade. The European banks are also feeling the pinch, where Switzerland's second largest bank, Credit Suisse, which had been in trouble since 2021, saw its shares sink by nearly about 14.3% this week. The Germany's Commerce Bank is down by 12%, while Spain's Santander has shed almost about 7.4% of its market value. The dramatic failure of the Silicon Bank has shattered the confidence of the startup industry as well. Many experts are now predicting that we could now witness a decade of startup winter. The American startup space, which grew by leaps and bounds in the last decade, will now find it hard to raise capital. Now, getting investment for a new business will not be easy. Inflation, poor regulation and greed was at the heart of the bank runs that were witnessed in America in the last week. But the crisis is far from over, which is why political leaders in America are in a bit of a tizzy to try and reassure the American banking system is safe. But how convinced are the American consumers?
From customers of Signature Bank, particularly those who had uninsured deposits, to know that they would be protected. So that's what the president reinforced a short time ago. And we want to make sure everyone knows the bank branches are open today. This was even an area that could have been in doubt over the weekend if, again, we were not successful in persuading the federal government to include Signature and all of its customers in its protection. So the banks are open. Everything is fine, calm.
But staying calm when your deposits are in fact stuck in the bank that has just witnessed a bank run is not easy. The collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank and the Signature Bank has been compared to the Bear Stearns moment from 2008. No one wants to end up losing their life savings. The immediate future for some of the American banks and also the startup space at this moment looks very choppy. Inflation in America and indeed in the rest of the world is not going to come off the boil. And it will, of course, not ease things for the banks and businesses as they operate in a very financially unpredictable moment. Because remember, when banks fail, it is the common people who ultimately end up paying the price with their life savings. Now, if you ever get robbed, harassed or witness any sort of a crime for that matter, who do you turn to? Now, you'd expect the police to, of course, come to your help. You'd rely on the laws for justice. But what happens when those who are meant to protect you become the key culprits themselves? Now, that's exactly what is happening in the United Kingdom, where a report by the National Police Chiefs Council has revealed some terrible figures. Between October 2021 and April 2022, there were at least about 1,500 police officers who were accused of violence against women and girls. Let me actually break down this shocking figure for you. 1,483 serious allegations were reported against 1,539 police officers. This accounts for nearly about 0.7% of the entire police workforce in Britain. Almost 1,177 of these cases related to alleged police were perpetrated violence against girls and women. Just over half of them were reportedly conduct matters, and these cases were filed by colleagues within the force. The remaining complaints, in fact, came from the public. So what were these cases about? Let's, in fact, tell you. 48% of the conduct allegations concerned discreditable behavior, meaning that the police officers had abused their position of power. 19% of the complaints, in fact, related to sexual assault, 13% to sexual harassment, and 6% to abuse of power for sexual favors. Can you believe this? These police officers, who were supposed to in fact help the sexually harassed women, were themselves preying upon women, their colleagues and also people in the common public. They were misusing their authority to the point that their own colleagues had to blow the whistle. So let's see as to what the public allegations were about. Over 66% of the cases were about the use of force, officers forcefully handcuffing people during arrests. 9% of these allegations concerned harassing behavior, 6% were related to assault, while 5% were related to abusive position for sexual purposes. Now, this is what has been happening in the British police system. Those already wronged by criminals are facing a similar fate at the hands of the police. And here comes the difficult question. Over 1,500 complaints were filed. What do you think was the outcome of these complaints? Did these police officers who were accused of serious allegations of sexual assault, did they get fired? Were they slapped with any penalty? In an ideal world, you'd hope that the answer is yes. But in the United Kingdom, believe it or not, 70% of the cases were simply brushed under the carpet. Only 13 of the 136 accused officers were sacked. The situation was even worse when the public were filing cases against police officers for abuse of power. 91% of all allegations and cases against a police officer were scrapped, and no one was fired due to public complaints. No action was taken. So what does the British police have to say about this? After all that has happened in recent years, the police have in fact gone from being heroes to villains. The cases of harassment, abuse of power, police brutality and hate crimes have gone up significantly. The British police seem to be failing the British public. Take the example of David Carrick. The elite UK office believed that his position made him untouchable. He reportedly had raped and assaulted at least about 12 women while in office. He intimidated them into silence and some called him a monster in uniform. Eventually, he was sentenced to a life in prison. But the fact is, for many years, no one could touch him. Another Metropolitan officer, Wayne Couzens, faced a similar fate. He also had kidnapped, raped and murdered innocent women. Months before, he had flashed at 3 women when he was supposed to be on duty. And during the hearing, the victim said that the police simply did not take their complaints seriously. Not until an innocent woman was killed. Now remember, incidents like this are not common just in the United Kingdom. Such incidents, in fact, take place globally. Between 2005 and 2015, there were 517 cases of police rape. An officer is accused of sexual misconduct at least once every 5 days in the United States. Police typically target the most vulnerable of people. Most of the sexual misconduct arrests against officers involve minors. Officers frequently assault women of color, domestic violence victims, informants, and women facing traffic stops. A Louisiana police chief reportedly had ushered in a drunk woman to his office and had then raped her. A Utah officer had taken advantage of a suicidal woman before escorting her to a hospital. Now, Daniel Holtzclaw, a serial rapist, was convicted for targeting 8 black women in Oklahoma. He did it while he was in uniform. And do we need to remind you as to what happened to Breonna Taylor? The police culture allows officers to in fact almost kill with impunity. In 2022, nearly 1,100 people were shot dead by the US police. If killings are so prevalent, what do you think can prevent attacks on vulnerable women or helpless minors? Who do you call when your rapist is a police officer? When the protector becomes the predator? Now, if you're thinking of retiring anytime soon, then I've got some bad news for you. And the news is this, that you will perhaps never be able to retire off your job. Now, look at China, for example. It is now pushing old people to work longer. China's current retirement age for men is 60 years, 55 for white-collared women, and 50 for women who work in factories. Now, soon, these numbers will change. How are we so sure? Now, Global Times earlier, the Chinese mouthpiece declared that China is raising its retirement age. China has found a way to sugarcoat this news. It says that the country is actually eyeing a quote-unquote progressive, flexible and differentiated path to raising the retirement age. Basically, if you're thinking of retiring, forget about it. The new retirement age has not been disclosed yet, but the Chinese officials say that those nearing retirement will have to push their plan for retiring by several months. And those who are young now will have to work at least a few additional years before they touch 60 or 55, before they even become eligible for pension. Now, vague phrases like several months and additional years leave enough scope for extension. But it is not like China is spoiled for choice. Now, all of its cosmetic hacks have not produced any reversal for an aging population. It comes with an added healthcare expense, it comes with increased pension costs, and an aging population means a shrinking economic base and an end to the dragon's dream of global domination. Because without manpower, without a workforce, how will China win the economic war? But China isn't alone in this boat. The aging population is a global problem. Japan is running from pillar to post for a solution, because nearly 30% of its population, believe it or not, 30% of the Japanese population is now above the age of 65. And just last week, a senior Japanese official had said that the country's population is practically on the verge of disappearing. In Italy, there is a political debate about pensions because nearly 25% of its people are 65 years or older. In France, Emmanuel Macron has become very, very unpopular. He's risking his re-election for a push for a delayed retirement age because there too, the story is the same. Worldwide countries are staring at the possibility of pensioners outnumbering the working hands, of the elderly outnumbering the workforce, and it has not happened yet, but it won't be too long before it happens. So what's the solution? One way is to do away with pensions. Secondly, get people to retire late. The first isn't an option in most European nations. It's not even open for discussion. It's almost like mentioning gun rights in America. So we're left with option number 2, get people to work longer and retire later so that they don't get paid pension. They work for their time. This is what countries that are aging are hoping to do. But given the protests in France, we should be safe in assuming that there is unlikely to be consensus on, in fact, increasing the working age before retirement to get pension. But also, aging population is just a part of the problem. The crisis is being coupled with a falling birth rate, because that is the key problem, and it's a double whammy. Now, not too long ago, China had declared for the very first time in over 70 years that its population had declined. South Korea is battling a declining population as well. So is Japan and a host of other countries. What's happening in these countries is, while the older population is getting older and aging, in comparison, there are far fewer children being born to take up jobs and join the workforce. Now, such is the crisis in China that only about 3.5 people of working age are available to support each retiree. Back in 2000, just about 23 years ago, it was 6.5 for every retiree. And by 2030, the number is, of course, expected to fall below 2.3. Now, this is a demographic disaster, and this problem will spill beyond the borders of China. So if you are a government employee or an employee entitled to a pension, and if you're planning to retire, then you may just want to hold on to your horses, because retirement is not going to come anytime soon. Now, before we get to our next story, I want you to take a look at these visuals. So what did you see? This is India's real fever. This is a new age nuisance. For the younger cohort, every marketplace, every shopping mall and every public transport area is a filming set to make a reel for Instagram. You cannot walk down the streets, let's say, of Delhi's Connaught Place without being approached for a prank or for a YouTube video. Now, all of these creators, all that they need is just a camera. Some even carry tripods and ring lights, and it doesn't matter if they have an audience. They just pose, they dance, and also monkey around for the sake of likes on social media. They might even film you without your consent. Now, this behavior is so prevalent that it has now caught the attention of the government as well. Now, much to the discontent of these reel creators, authorities have now announced that there will be strict measures. The Delhi Metro Rail will be penalized. This, remember, hasn't happened for the first time. The DMRC has also issued similar advisories in the month of February as well. It had used a reference from the Oscar-winning song Natu Natu from RRR. Look as to what it posted on its official Instagram handle. Dance is fun, but Delhi Metro mein na nacho. That is what it said, which means don't dance inside of the Delhi Metro. So why is this happening? Why does the Delhi Metro need to crack down on these youngsters who are making reels inside of the metro coaches? Now, what is the harm in having some fun during a boring commute? Of late, things have gone out of hand. A number of people making Instagram reels inside of metro coaches has risen sharply. If you search for hashtag Delhi Metro on Instagram, over 200,000 posts will pop up. A majority of these are reels of people dancing, singing, creating a ruckus in coaches in a place where they should not be creating a ruckus. No doubt these viral videos are fun to watch. You might be guilty of shooting or watching them yourselves. However, if you pay attention to the other passengers in these reels, you would understand and you would see their discomfort and shock at being included, of being filmed without consent. So what is this trend anyway? The metros are jam-packed with passengers most of the time. There is rarely any space to move around. People struggle to stand up straight. There are pushes and shoves that come from every direction. And amidst this, imagine some quirky dancer attempting a moonwalk to get some eyeballs on Instagram. Won't you be furious? The DMRC most certainly is, and it means business this time round. The Metro Corporation has strictly prohibited organized shooting inside of the metro. It now requires prior permission for film shoots, and even if you do get a permit, remember you'll be charged money as a token of apology to make up for the inconvenience caused to the commuters, and why not? How would you feel if you were suddenly caught doing something embarrassing in someone else's video? Not only this culture hampers your privacy, it also puts you potentially at risk because there are many factors that the youngsters simply don't consider. They run around, they swing on handbars, they do cartwheeling, they do elaborate dance steps. What if they fall? Or worse, what if someone else gets hit? What if someone gets hurt? Now, who will be held accountable then? It's all fun shooting these reels for Instagram, but the fact is, there is a time and a place to do it. So the next time you want to make a reel or just feel like dancing around, make sure that you're not barging into another person's personal space. And before shoving your camera into someone else's face, make sure that you have their consent to get their picture. Now, are you planning on getting a vaccination shot? Well, we hope you weren't up all night, because studies now suggest that sleep is crucial. Before you head to your doctor, it turns out that the body's immune system is not friendly if you think that a few hours of sleep is enough. The doctors say that good sleep can actually amplify a vaccine's protection, and that sleep deprivation can lower a vaccine's ability to act on a virus. But there's a twist. The studies have found that this phenomenon only applies to women. So why are only men's immune systems under attack? Now, studies show that women in fact have stronger immune systems and stronger responses to vaccines. This conflict between men and women is due to hormonal, genetic and environmental differences, which can of course change over a person's lifespan. But this is not a battle of the genders. Remember, scientists say that if a person is sleep deprived or even jet lagged, then they should consider delaying taking their vaccine shot, as the body will not actively respond to the vaccine, which will reduce its protection against the virus or bacteria. So how does one get some good sleep? A good night's sleep requires the body to go through at least 4 stages. During the first and the second stage of sleep, the human body starts to decrease its rhythm, also known as the circadian rhythm. It primarily responds to light and dark environments around us, and then comes the third stage. It is known as a deep and a slow state of sleep, where the body is restoring and fixing itself on a cellular level. This stage is all about fixing the damage that our bodies might have experienced through the day. Our memories also get stored in the long-term panel of the brain during this period. The last and perhaps the most important stage is the REM sleep. This is the rapid eye movement sleep. This is when we actually start dreaming. Now, missing out on this stage can in fact lead to memory loss and also chronic diseases as well. So if you were to experience all these 4 stages, it can boost your immune response to vaccine. The US Center for Disease Control and Prevention has said that a person needs at least about 8 hours of slumber. Anything less can cause a whole host of health problems. But with busy working schedules and also very demanding jobs, people don't get to catch on some good shut-eye time. Researchers have now taken a note of that and have said that adults between the age of 18 to 60 have a much lower immune response system in comparison with people above the age of 65. So how else can sleep deprivation in fact affect us? Lack of sleep can take a toll on your body, as this is a basic human need like eating, drinking and breathing. Sleep deprivation can also affect your hormone release as well. Eating habits and body temperatures to a large extent are also dictated by how much sleep that you get. But there's also a more severe side. A person can in fact put themselves at risk of heart disease of kidney failure, of high blood pressure, and even a stroke if they're not sleeping enough. It's never too late to get some good shut-eye time. There are a few ways that you can actually work to sleep better. First off, try to resist the temptation to nap for a long time in a day. Taking short naps is good. Power naps are beneficial, but long naps in the day cause a struggle for you to sleep at night. And this happens more often with people with irregular work shifts. Staying off caffeine as much as possible can also help you sleep better. This is hard if you're a coffee lover, where a single dose of caffeine can enhance focus, but it also steals your sleep time as it keeps stimulating your nervous system. Now, create a sleep and a waking up pattern. Planning your sleep timings can in fact help in long-term sleep quality. Irregular sleep patterns can also mess up your circadian rhythm and leave you groggy through the day. This one is of course going to be difficult for some people. Try to cut down on alcohol. Although having the occasional drink is fine, drinking booze often negatively affects your hormones. Alcohol consumption is known to increase symptoms of sleep apnea, snoring, and also disrupted sleep patterns. While partying at night or pulling an all-night work shift must seem unavoidable, it's time for you to prioritize your sleep and also set an alarm for a brighter morning. All right, now staying on with more news on health. Do you check your calories in the food items before you eat them? A lot of people who are extremely health conscious actually do this, but does it really help? Do you want to know the health value of every dish that you put in your mouth? Is this knowledge actually a boon or is it a bane? So let's dive into how calorie count affects an individual's psyche. Now, people are increasingly becoming aware of what's healthy for them, and so are restaurants. The food joints are adding the calorie count of every dish on the menu, which has now become a norm in the food industry. The United States, India and the United Kingdom have in fact caught on this trend, but what do customers in fact think of this healthy approach by restaurants? When it comes to hardcore foodies, these people care less about what is healthy for their bodies. The calories in a dish could be as good as a random number for them. But scientists now believe that this move by restaurants, where they tell you what is the calorie content in your food, needs to be followed by educating the consumers. They believe that this could of course beat offensive food-related behaviors and in turn battle what could be rising obesity epidemic that we are looking at. You heard it right, an obesity epidemic has gripped the world. The World Obesity Federation has said that much of the world population will be overweight by the year 2035, that is about 12 years from now. This proves that we need to take a critical look at our eating habits and also adapt to a better lifestyle. But the epidemic is not as simple as it sounds. The obesity rates differ from one country to another, so let's take India as an example, where home-cooked food is the norm for most people. The calorie count move may have little effect on customers in a country where eating out is not the norm in comparison with other major nations. But what happens when you have enough disposable income and easy access to your favorite food joints? A person may just replace home-cooked food with ready-to-eat meals. While it can be extremely convenient, it also creates a whole different set of problems. For starters, eating out often can cause diet-related issues, such as hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and tons of heart-related abnormalities. Over two-thirds of the people fall in the 26 to 59 age bracket, and they suffer from non-communicable diseases due to excessively eating out at food joints. So why do a person knowingly eat unhealthy? It's because they don't. A restaurant will usually tell a customer that the food on their menu is healthy and fresh, but the reality could be something else altogether. Doctors recommend that women should consume 2,000 calories and a man should consume 2,300 calories in a day. And this is just to stay healthy and fit. But let us give you a reality check on some of the most consumed dishes. An ordinary veg patty burger, believe it or not, contains 963 calories. A single serving of fish and chips contains 585 calories. And the people's favorite cheeseburger contains nothing less than 410 calories. The list is almost endless. Eating out twice a day can cause a person to exceed the recommended calorie intake. So why give so much importance to calorie intake? Why does it affect it so much? In simple words, calories are a measure of how much energy a food or a drink contains. Now, the amount of energy that a person needs depends on their age, lifestyle, and also their height and weight. There are other factors such as hormones and medicines which also dictate as to how many calories does a person need. If you balance the amount of calories that you're consuming with the number of calories that you burn, then you can obtain the ideal healthy body weight. While restaurants are in fact trying their part to try and educate people on how to choose a healthy option, it might take time for consumers to adjust and prioritize health, as people will need to first understand the importance of calorie intake and how it can either make or break your health. So let's in fact leave you with some food for thought. Will the new food menus create an awareness for mindful eating and intuitive eating practices? Or do you think you're one of those people who would in fact prioritize tasty food over the calories that you actually put in your mouth? So that's all the time we have in this edition of Gravitas. We'll leave you with these Gravitas images. Have a good night.
Long Wales in the